Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be revealing tier 1 and tier 2 spells. That's the new mechanic for the next Battlegrounds season. Let's dive right in. I'm going to start off with a very interesting one. We have Dem Apples. This spell gives minions in the tavern +1/+3. So this immediately makes me think about demons, because you can use them to eat the shop. Because normally when you are spending, a gold to buff the tavern, you would have to buy all minions in the tavern to get the full return of your investment. Now, if you have cards like Picky Eater or Mind Muck, all of a sudden you can get those cards twice as fast, because both the Picky Eater is buffed, but you're also eating a buff minion. So really nice synergy right off the bat. Next up, we have Tavern Dish Banana. This is a very known spell. It is a big banana from Mukla. Now, normally you don't pay a gold for this, so I think this is going to be a card that you really add when you really just have a gold left over and you don't know what to do with it. It's fine, you get +2/+2. There's a little bit of synergy with Whelp Smuggler. It's better on, Cleaves and Divine Shields, but not a card that I would really change my curve for or really change my plan to like, oh, I have to be able to buy this big banana. But, useful to buff things out of blaster range and just nifty little card if you have an extra gold. Then we have Tavern Coin. Now, this is a super flexible card. It's going to give you a gold on demand. Now, you pay a gold to get a gold. You might think that's not really doing anything, but how many times have you had a situation where you really can't spend that last gold productively if you can now spend it on buying a coin, hold it in your hand, and then you can make a future turn much, much cleaner. Think of leveling to 5 a lot of the time. That's very expensive, really annoying to do, but if you have a coin in your hand, you can do that without having to sell a minion of your board to go up to 10 gold. So very useful for that, and just in general allows you to set up a Jeeve curve where on 4 gold you might buy a 1-drop and the Tavern Coin, and then on turn 3 you can level for 3, coin, buy a minion, something like that. So just really nice, and unless you really know you have to coin straight away to use it anyway, this is like a must buy for me. You just buy it, and even if you realize later in a turn you have to use it, what's the harm? Then we got Fortify. Fortify gives a minion 3 health and taunt. In the early game, I think that's fine. The +3 health can really allow you to trade better. You're not going to be punished by a Leroy or by Venom super early in the game. I mean, unless you're playing against the Curator. But most of the time, it's totally fine to just dump all your stats on one big guy, and then taunting it and giving it extra health actually makes your fights a lot better. Now, in the mid game, in the late game, you can use this to protect against the cleave. You can taunt a Divine Shield. You can essentially taunt anything that you want to take the aggro, right? If the opponent has a Leroy, you can taunt the thing that you want them to Leroy to keep them off your actual good minions. Counter to that, we have Pointy Arrow. Pointy Arrow gives 4 attack. This is, in my opinion, much worse in the early game because, as I said, early game, it's generally about just trading well, and health allows you to do that much better. But if you give a minion a lot of extra damage, on average, it's going to trade worse than a minion that has a lot of health. So Pointy Arrow for me is really something that I'm going to use if I really can't spend the gold any other way, or if I have Cleave, if I have Divine Shield, like a Deflecto bot, that allows you to use it much more efficiently. And then last, for the tier 1 spells, we have Enchanted Lasso. This steals a random minion from the tavern, and it's also the first spell that costs 2 gold to buy instead of 1. Now, the reason why is because it gives you a minion, and normally a minion costs 3 gold. So if it would cost 1 gold, it'd be broken. So this is really Yogg hero power without the +1/+1, but you don't have to pick Yogg. So it's not like it's really bad. It's actually going to allow you to do some cool things with your curve. So you heard me talk about Jeeve curve earlier. That's when you don't level to tier 2 on turn 2. It's when you level to tier 2 on turn 3. And when you do that, you'll have 2 gold left over. And Enchanted Lasso is perfect for that. Allows you to buy a minion without having the gold to be awkward. You wouldn't need an extra economy unit for it either. Also, let's say you did follow the standard curve and you did level on turn 2. On 5 gold, you could still have a lasso to get a random minion from the tavern and then spend your 3 gold to buy a minion of your choice. So can be super useful to fix your curve. Absolutely. Let's talk about the tier 2 spells now. The first one is Careful Investment. This gives you 2 gold for your next turn, which allows for some interesting curve plays. So you heard me talk about standard curve, that's when you level to tier 2 on turn 2. On 5 gold, that's always a little bit of a problem you have to solve. You either need to start with a Elemental or a Shell Collector, or you need to get lucky and then on turn 3 roll economy in the shop, because with 5 gold you need to make 1 gold to be able to double buy. Now with Careful Investment, what you could do is instead of buying 2 minions on turn 3, you could use Careful Investment, and then on turn 4, which is your 6 gold turn, you'll have 8 gold instead. Now that opens up a beautiful curve. We can level to tier 3, but also still buy a minion because it'll be 8 gold, 5 to level, 3 to buy a unit. Or you could just buy this and use this whenever you know that next turn is going to be a big turn, you're going to need a lot of money. So think again about, I want to go to tier 5 next turn. Now I'm going to use my Careful Investment. That's going to make it much cleaner. Or I have a brand and I want to be able to buy tons of battle cries. Okay, I'm going to use my Careful Investment now. So next turn I have way more money. I can have a big turn. So really just allows you to plan your game better. Really interesting card. Then the next one is Overconfidence. This is a really fun card in my opinion. It's a fun spell. It's Barov's bet essentially, but you always bet on yourself. If you win the next combat, you're going to get 3 gold. If you tie, you get 1, and then obviously if you lose, you get nothing. So you are going to invest 1 gold to buy this card, but it's so nice to use when you know you're going to win. So what are some situations that could arise where you essentially have a fixed bet, where you know you're going to win? So think again about turn 3. A lot of the time your opponent isn't going to like the shop, and instead of buying, they're going to sell their starter unit and go to tier 3. That is a slam dunk opportunity for Overconfidence because they won't have a board. And if they do, it's a Elemental or something and you're going to win anyway. So very, very good in certain situations where you know you're going to win. This is also nice for these really strong early game heroes. Think about Lich Bazil, who just trades health for extra gold, so she has a bigger board. Or something like a Yogg. Yogg, generally speaking, also wins the early game due to having the advantage of having more units, and they are buffed. Something like a Millhouse. Millhouse also has certain turns where Millhouse will pretty much beat any board just because you have a lot of minions, because you only pay 2 gold for them. So super interesting card. It's also going to be a card, a spell that allows you to continue a snowball situation, because if you have more money, you can buy more units, and then you're stronger, and then you're going to keep winning. Now, it's unlikely that you're going to be chaining Overconfidence, where you keep rolling it in the tavern and you have a lot of them, but think about it when it happens. That's going to be a very fun experience where you win and you keep winning because you have a lot of gold. Okay, then we have Chef's Choice. This is similar to the lasso that we saw earlier. It gives you a minion of a certain type, so you can cast it on an elemental, kind of like the spellcraft of the tier 2 Naga. You can get a minion of the same type, but you won't get the same minion. Obviously this would be really good if it was the same minion, because you could just use it to force triples, but knowing that you're going to get a minion of a certain type can still be a big advantage. Now think of dragons with Whelp Smuggler, think about, you know, Murloc synergy. If you have Bream counter, you can force this to feed your Bream counter, and there's lots of other examples. Obviously there's tons of synergy within the types, so usually you want more units of that type. And you can also use it to fish for a specific minion and get lucky. So think about casting it on a beast, and now you have a Banana Slammer, and that's really good for the composition you're going for. And overall, it's just nice to be able to purchase a unit for 2 gold. Now, we talked about that with the lasso. It just allows you to fix your curve. It is a tier 2 spell, so theoretically you could get it on turn 3. Now, that allows you to buy a minion and then Chef's Choice something, and that's generally speaking still way better than having to sell your starter unit to double buy it, because even though the minion is random, you'll have 3 minions instead of 2. And now you're strong, and the next turn you might cast an Overconfidence, etc. So there's, yeah, lots of synergy within the spells as well. Next spell is Lantern Light. This, I think, is actually not very good when you can first buy it, because it gives your minion stats equal to the tier, which is essentially Reef River. Now, Reef River is nice in the early game, because +2/+2 does matter, but you don't have to pay 2 gold to cast the spellcraft here. You have to pay 2 gold to buy Lantern Light, then obviously you can cast it for free. But if we are going to pay 2 gold for a one-time boost, we want it to be better than +2/+2. So unless you have no other choice, which means, let's say you didn't have economy, and on the 5 gold turn, hey, I can buy a minion and Lantern Light it. Okay, sure, we'll take that, we'll do that. But for the most part, you're going to want to cast this on tier 4, tier 5, tier 6, and preferably on a cleave minion, on a shield minion, or you can get crafty with this and use it on a vulnerable low health minion, buff it out of blaster range. You could use it on a Titus to make it better in the combat and more chance that the Titus can survive one hit, and then obviously your fight becomes a lot better. Now, this next one is really it's going to really depend on the situation you're in. It's called Leaf Through the Pages, and it makes your next 3 rolls free. So for a 2 gold investment, you might say, well, this is a must buy because I make 1 gold. Now, the tricky thing here is you probably weren't going to spend 3 gold rolling that turn. So while it is a good deal in the long run, it could hurt your tempo on the turn you buy it. So buying Leaf Through the Pages on, let's say, the 8 gold turn or 9 gold turn probably prevents you from buying 3 minions, because you've now spent 2 gold on Leaf Through the Pages. That means that you're weaker, that means that your next fight you might take damage, so there is a real cost to this. Now, when it is amazing is when you have Treasure Seeker Elise, because you want to roll a lot anyway to get the Golden Monkey, and the obvious amazing scenario is when you are Millhouse. Millhouse has to pay 2 gold per reroll, so investing 2 gold for 3 rolls is a no-brainer. So yeah, this card has a lot of different situations, and depending on what you're in, it's going to be meh to okay to absolutely amazing. So keep it in mind, not a slam dunk. Don't always buy it, because then you might take damage when you shouldn't. But in other situations, it's absolutely a slam dunk. Then we got 2 more. We have Hasty Excavation first. This gives you a gold at the cost of 3 health. So very similar to the demon we already have, where you have to pay 3 health to get a 3/3. Now, I think the demon is better early because it gives you tempo. It gives you a 3/3 body on the board. Now, obviously, when your board is already full, that card becomes a lot worse. And generally speaking, you don't want to pay 3 health for this. But what I'm thinking about with Hasty Excavation is this might allow you to follow a certain curve and then still be able to pay a gold to activate a spell. And that can have some really, really good effects. Now, an example would be I buy Hasty Excavation with 3 health on, let's say, the 5 gold turn, and now I can buy a Careful Investment on the 6 gold turn without having to give up on buying 2 units. Now I can use the Careful Investment turn on the 6 gold, or let's say on the 7 gold turn, right? Because the 7 gold turn is pretty clean. You level for 4, you buy a unit for 3. But then 8 gold is always a little weird. 8 gold, you level for 7. Now I have a gold left. What do I do with that gold? Maybe I roll on 3, maybe I roll on 4. Maybe I sell 2 units and buy something from the shop. But all of a sudden, if you were able to use Careful Investment on your 7 gold turn, that means that your 8 gold turn, you can actually level for 7 and buy a unit from the shop without having to sell anything, giving you an extra 3-drop. And in that case, it could very easily have been worth it to take 3 damage early, because having that better curve is probably going to save you more than 3 health. So I think that even though this looks very expensive, because of how spells will change the way you look at your curve, because all of a sudden you need an extra gold here, an extra 2 gold there, it's going to be very useful to be able to smooth out your curve. So I would say the first one early is probably going to be a snap buy, just because it's going to save you health in the long run and give you a much smoother curve. Now, I don't think you want to buy a lot of these just because it is a pretty bad trade, trading 3 health for a gold, but early game, I think it's going to be worth it. We have arrived at the last spell. This is called Strike Oil, and it is by far, I would say, the most interesting spell that I am revealing because it's ramp. It allows your gold to advance faster than it normally would. So very, very simple example. If you cast Strike Oil on the, let's say, 5 gold turn, that would generally be the earliest that you can do it because it's a tier 2 spell. You can only roll it in a tier 2 tavern. Then your 6 gold turn is now going to be a 7 gold turn. When I thought about this in the beginning, I was thinking, is this really going to be worth it? Because you do pay 3 gold for this, so this does cost you a minion. You are now behind. You are more likely to take damage. And we all know in Battlegrounds, it can be very punishing to lose a few fights in a row, which is probably what happens when you skip buying a minion, because you're spending 3 gold on your ramp. But again, the curves get so weird that having an extra gold suddenly is extremely useful. You are going to be able to catch up pretty quickly because what you can do now on your 7 gold turn is you can buy 2 minions from the tavern and use a 1 gold spell. You could use Careful Investment, or you could use a Banana, or you could use a Fortify, and all of a sudden you've partially made up for skipping that 1 minion. And then the turn after that you can do the same thing because now you have 8 gold, and normally you would level by and that would be 7 gold, but now you have an extra gold, so you could use a spell again from the tavern and you can help that to catch up. So even though this is a tricky one to evaluate because we haven't really seen something like this, we have seen the quest that gives you an extra gold per turn, but that's difficult to compare because it comes online later most of the time and everybody is questing, right? So it's like, oh, you know, you're all trying to complete the quest. Here it's kind of you're the only one doing that quest if you're the only one buying Strike Oil, and everyone else is buying minions, so you are taking more damage for that. But I would say that this looks very good. So I will definitely be buying all the Strike Oils in the beginning to test this and see, is it really strong? Is it really cool to have that extra gold so early? Is it going to really be worth it to take the extra damage early for having a weaker board, but then try to catch up as fast as possible with the additional gold? All right, guys, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this reveal. Thank you again so much, Blizzard, for giving me this opportunity, and everyone have a great time on the spell release. See you.